there was a way to, if enough people got vaccinated, we'll get rid of coronavirus. That was never the case. It is never going to be the case. And all you're doing is being a right-wing authoritarian and screwing over workers. And that's what Sean Penn did with his mandate. And so that's when I became an unfan of Sean Penn's. And now it gets even worse. Now he's got an NGO. What's the NGO called that he works with?
CORE, and you can see it on his little patch on his fake, fake military Zelensky jacket.
Yeah. So now he's over in trying to get. He's on the side of NATO in Ukraine, so he's actually doing damage. He's actually going to cause more suffering for the people of Ukraine than they would have to go through if a guy like Sean Penn wasn't involved. Sean Penn thinks he's helping the people of Ukraine. He's actually a useful idiot for imperialism and NATO power, and that's what he's doing. And let's watch what he says.
In those early hours, I know that Trump gave them javelins. I know that they had some defenses. But if you go back to the Budapest Agreement, they were at the time the third largest nuclear power in the world. And they made an agreement that they'd give those weapons to Russia to be destroyed in exchange for protection from Russia, Great Britain, and the U.S. Lesson to be learned here, don't give up your nuclear weapons if you have them, because you can't believe people like Vladimir Putin.
Well, even countries that have nuclear weapons can remain intimidated to use them. And we're seeing that now with our own country. And I fear what that legacy is going to be. We don't.
So I don't know if you just heard what he said. I'll repeat it. Well, let's just play it back.
No, well, even countries that have nuclear weapons can remain intimidated to use them. And we're seeing that now with our own country. And I fear what that legacy is going.
So us being afraid to use nuclear weapons, he says, the United States not using nuclear weapons, he says he's afraid of what the legacy of that will be. You know what the legacy of that will be, Sean? No nuclear war, and we continue the human civilization project going forward. You know what the result would be if we weren't afraid to use nuclear weapons? The annihilation of every human being on Earth. That's what we're talking about, Sean, who pretends to care about people. But that just goes to show you what a alcohol-addled brain he's using, because that's not a sound mind. What he's literally advocating for is for the United States to not be reluctant to use nuclear weapons. He's saying we can't be intimidated to not use nuclear weapons. He's saying, let's use nuclear weapons. There's no other way to look at what he just said. And that's not going to be censored. There's a guy, if I call for the murder of one person on social media, I get banned. He's calling for the annihilation of the human civilization. That's what that is. That's not being tough against Putin. I'll play it again.
Putin. Well, even countries that have nuclear weapons can remain intimidated to use them. And we're seeing that now with our own country. And I fear what that legacy is going to be. No one wants to see a nuclear conflict.
I don't want to.
Yeah, but guess what? You can't punch someone in the face and say, I don't want to fight. Nobody wants a fight. That's what you're doing. You're telling them, what are you, afraid to use nuclear weapons? I don't want a nuclear war. What are you, afraid to use nuclear? I don't want a nuclear war. What are you, afraid to use them? That guy is mental. He's just as fucking dumb as Sean Hannity. He's even worse because some people listen to this guy. Some people think he's not a moron. Some people think Sean Penn actually knows something because he cares about the downtrodden. Look what he did in Haiti. Look what he did in Haiti. He has no critique of the Clintons in Haiti, what they did to the people in Haiti. He has no critique of that. You know why he doesn't have a critique of that? Could you tell me, Max, why he doesn't have a critique of the Clintons?
He introduced Bill Clinton and praised him as this once-in-a-lifetime leader with laser-like focus who was a brilliant hero at a gala, star-studded gala, multi-million-dollar gala, where I think Sean Penn was being honored for his work in Haiti. I mean, and that was right after, like we learned about the hustle that the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation ran in Haiti. I mean, it's straight up embezzlement. What did they build? 8 houses that no one lived in? Where did the money go? They were presiding over all the money. They were doling it out partly to Sean Penn's organization, CORE.
This is it. This is what I want you to talk about. Talk about Sean Penn's organization, his non-governmental, his charity. Sean Penn has a charity. It's called an NGO, non-government organization, and they get money from the fucking Clinton. Talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, you said Sean Hannity's actually smarter than Sean Penn. That's right. I mean, Sean Hannity knows what he's doing.
Yes.
Not that bright, but he is like an effective Republican hack. Sean Penn, I'm not even sure if he totally knows what he's doing. You look at the board of CORE, and you have a 3-star U.S. general on the board. What is he doing there? Obviously, they've integrated, and they're using humanitarian aid as a front for military action and infiltration. And then he has one of the key figures from the Clinton Foundation, Clinton operative, also sitting on the board. There's a great piece, actually, in Whitney Webb's Unlimited Hangout by Vanessa Beeley. It's called Sean Penn and his, what is it actually called? It's called The COVID-19 Celebrity Humanitarianism, Sean Penn and the Great Reset. But it starts out by, talking about Sean Penn's real role as kind of a front man in Haiti and how his organization was being funded not just by the Clinton, I think it was the Clinton Global Initiative, not the Clinton Foundation, and USAID. What is USAID? It's the U.S. government, and specifically, it's the U.S. Agency for International Development that works with U.S. intelligence to use aid as a cat's paw for U.S. infiltration. And that's what they're doing in Ukraine. That's what they did in Haiti. And Sean Penn probably has no idea how any of this works. He's just
he's just a moron,
very addled actor.
Yes,
who can barely express himself here and actually winds up calling for the
nuclear war.
Yeah, I mean, this guy loves humanity.
He's such a humanitarian. I mean, you can't be afraid to use nuclear weapons. Holy shit! Here's what he says also when this is 100% wrong. So this is a guy who's just being propagandized. He says, "It is clear to me that the Ukrainians will win this. The question is at what cost? They are not going to win this."
He looks like he just went through a war.
Yeah, the Ukrainians are not going to win this. The Ukrainians are being slaughtered now. And we always knew this was going to happen. Here's what Sean Penn tweeted out. By open source, 2 squadrons of F-15s or 16s, that's 12 aircraft with better tech than Russian MiGs or SUs. Quickly trainable, takes 3 weeks to train people to fly one. To Ukrainian aviators would cost private sector buyers about $300 million. Add another $200 million in missile defense for a total of $500 million. One billionaire could end this war in Ukraine. Or, of course, there are add-ons in arming and maintaining, blah, blah, blah. He's calling, do you understand if you give them those 16 or 12 aircraft, that's not going to mean Ukraine's going to win the war. That means that the war would be extended and more people will die. So what Sean Penn is doing is advocating for more Ukrainians to die. Because how do wars end? All wars end in one way, a negotiation. They have a negotiation and they have a peace treaty. That's how wars end. So you're going to have a peace treaty with Putin, and we all know how it's going to end. Ukraine's going to remain neutral. That's how it has to end. Sean Penn doesn't know any of this. He doesn't even know that the United States committed a coup in Ukraine in 2014 that set all this in motion. He doesn't even know that.
He doesn't even know that he didn't write those tweets.
Yeah.
There's no way he wrote those tweets.
There's no way he wrote those tweets, right?
I mean, you listen to how inarticulate he is on Hannity, and you look at the content of the tweets, and this is someone laying out a classic CIA operation, using a billionaire cutout to keep their fingerprints off of it in order to fund a proxy war. This is what the CIA does, and somebody else wrote those tweets. Seems worth a think. Okay, I thought about it. It seems like a disaster. It also seems kind of interesting that Twitter allows this. Like, what if I started fundraising for someone to start, murdering my neighbors? Seems worth a think. I would get booted off Twitter. He's pretty much shilling for a gun running operation on Twitter, and that's totally fine.
That's totally fine because they agree with